on the ability of credit unions to lend short-term finance to its members. The Deputy has 4 minutes to make an initial statement.
Thank you very much, Cathaoirleach. Minister, a taxi driver in my constituency, who would be a friend of the family's, contacted me a number of weeks ago. And his business is as a taxi driver, and he had an issue with his car that he needed to get finance to get it repaired in order that he could keep going to work and to keep to earn a living. At the same time, given the industry that he's in, his income has declined dramatically over the last number of years, as has an enormous amount of people, and he's in arrears with his mortgage. The place where he goes to for that kind of finance is the credit union. And he went to the credit union in Galway, and he was told that on the basis that he was in arrears with his mortgage for a period in excess of 12 months, he was not entitled to access credit, and they could not lend to him. That's what he was told. He was told that this was on the basis of a circular from the central bank, which issued to credit unions on the 22nd of February 2013. And the paragraph in the circular on prudent lending says, an important factor, and this was to credit unions, an important factor in determining creditworthiness in the current environment is whether a member is already in difficulty in repaying existing debt, and in particular mortgage debt. The central bank expects that a credit union must be fully satisfied as to a member's creditworthiness and ability to service all debts before advancing any new credit or top-up facilities. So this paragraph in the guidelines says that if you're in trouble with your debts and you're not able to manage them, which is the place where this man is in because he cannot meet his mortgage, as so many people can't, that they're not to be lent any money. And he was refused a loan from the credit union in order to get the money for his taxi, in order to get back out on the road, in order to be back out to earn a living and get back out again. As a result of that phone call from the family friend and from a constituent, I made contact with a number of the credit unions in Galway, St. Columba's Credit Union and Naomh Pádraig Credit Union, to get their view of how this is impacting on their customers. And while it's not hitting them at the moment, it's working its way through, and they are coming across examples where they're unable, because of these guidelines as they interpret them, to lend to people who are in trouble. Another case was brought to mind when I was talking to St. Columba's Credit Union, was of a person who wanted to borrow money to buy a headstone for their son and wasn't able to because they were in a similar situation, interest-only mortgage for greater than 12 months, and they believed they were prohibited from lending any more to this type of character, this type of person. And I think this situation that has evolved has undermined and completely goes against the spirit of what the credit union movement is about. The credit union is exactly about this kind of instance, where someone needs credit on a flexible basis, where the person is known to the credit union as someone who is in the community and they have a relationship with for years. What's happening now is that we're pushing people away from that friendly, accessible, fair system, which has community focus on it. And we're running the risk of pushing people from that into the moneylender sector, into the loan sharks, into places where they will be in desperate need. If it wasn't for the fact that my friend was able to get finance from his family, he wouldn't have been able to get the money to put his taxi back on the road and to get back out there. And this is something that is really happening. This isn't something that I'm making up. This is something that is a problem. And I would ask you, Minister, to clarify with the central bank whether this is the case, to make sure that this is not, if this is being interpreted, because the wording I have here in front of me is that this is what is in the circular. And if this is the case, I think it's the wrong way, and the central bank need to change it.
Thank you, Deputy. Minister.
Can I thank the Deputy for raising this very important issue and for clarifying the matter, which I think is important, as he rightly points out. The Central Bank of Ireland issued a circular to all credit unions on the 22nd of February 2013 regarding prudential lending. This circular emphasises the need for credit unions to assess adequately the credit worthiness of applications for credit, and in particular the need to collect sufficient information about borrowers' mortgage circumstances. The Central Bank has informed me that this circular does not contain new requirements for credit unions. It highlights the changed operating environment for credit unions arising from the introduction of the new personal insolvency regime, and reminds credit unions to take into account when assessing the creditworthiness of members applying for loans. An important factor in determining creditworthiness in the current environment is whether a member is already in difficulty in repaying existing debt, and in particular mortgage debt. The circular refers credit unions to their existing obligations Under the European Communities Regulations of 2010, which were transposed into Irish law on the 11th of June 2010. Specifically, their attention was drawn to credit unions' obligations to assess creditworthiness of customers. And the circular states, 1, before concluding a credit agreement with a customer, a creditor shall assess the consumer's creditworthiness on the basis of sufficient information, where appropriate, obtained from the consumer, and where necessary on the basis of consultation of the relevant database. And it goes through other conditions that were part of that European framework. The central bank expects credit unions to carry out appropriate credit assessments in all cases. The circular does not prohibit credit unions from providing short-term finance to its members, taking account of the credit union's financial capacity to do so and the members' ability to repay. The central bank circular does not impose restrictions on credit unions from lending any funds to people who are in distress with mortgage arrears. Its focus is on the need to assess creditworthiness generally and properly, and to make provision to cover prudential losses within the credit union as a whole. It must be remembered that within her independent regulatory discretion, the Registrar of Credit Unions acts to support the prudential soundness of individual credit unions, to maintain sector stability and to protect the savings of credit union members. In February, the Central Bank invited banking and credit union representatives in a number of meetings to discuss the creation of a workable burden-sharing agreement between secured and unsecured lenders. Discussions between banking and credit union representatives are ongoing. In conclusion, Last Ceann Comhairle, the Government has brought forward a number of reforms to improve the regulatory system in Ireland. The protection of consumers remains a core focus of the Government's intention, and we will continue to work on resolving issues that arise. The Department and the Central Bank are aware of the issues raised by the sector. I think it's important to say that what was in the circular is really not new to the existing regulatory environment and framework that existed. Secondly, what's important to say that it is probably a matter of interpretation, I think, as the deputies rightly pointed out, and maybe an overzealous interpretation by some local credit unions who understandably are concerned by this because of the new regulatory situation that exists, but nonetheless want to ensure that any assessment of creditworthiness across the customer base is done in a prudential way. And of course that was an issue that came out of the most recent report in terms of credit unions. So I do welcome the opportunity of putting this information in the record of the House, and I think if there are significant other issues of interpretation surrounding this issue, it may well be useful for the Register or indeed the Central Bank to issue further directives in this regard.
Deputies, 2 minutes for a reply.
I thank the Minister for his reply and for the succinctness of it. The circular, as I read it, and I have a brief history of a number of years working in finance, says that it is up to the credit union to obligations there to assess the creditworthiness of somebody before it lends money. Now, if you're a person who's in mortgage arrears for greater than 12 months, you are de facto, by any, not a creditworthy individual, which is what a lot of the credit unions are coming to. And the line I read out to you, which the Central Bank expects a credit union must be fully satisfied as to creditworthiness and ability to service all debts before advancing any new credit. By virtue of being in mortgage arrears, you are not capable of servicing all your debts. That's what mortgage arrears is. So the circular, if it is written in such a fashion as to give the false interpretation to the credit unions as you outline, I think a clarification needs to be issued from the Central Bank to the credit unions to put that on record so that they have it in writing, because you are right. The credit unions are coming under new scrutiny which they haven't done before, new regulatory frameworks which is to them intimidating. It's different, and they're trying to abide by it. And if they're getting ambiguous statements, which, mind you, I have to say I agree with them. In my view, this wasn't ambiguous. This was straightforward. But if it is being sent out in such a way that it is capable of such misinterpretation, I think it needs to be clarified urgently. And I'd ask you if you would use your office to ensure that that happens, and that clarity is given to the credit union, so that the instance that I've outlined that happened in Galway on 2 occasions doesn't happen again.
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Well, I think it's a useful exchange, Last Ceann Comhairle. Firstly, there's a recognition in the government, as there is in this House on all sides of it, the importance of the credit union sector in terms of lending for short and medium term. It's absolutely a crucial part of the entire financial environment for the country. And I know the credit union has come through a difficult time, as indeed have other financial institutions. But we do need to see a proper assessment and lending policy right the way across the credit union sector. But also people have got to be aware of prudential risk. That is an issue that did arise in some cases concerning the credit union movement. If a clarification, I think the point that the Deputy made is a useful one, Lascan Corda. We will certainly transmit his views to the Central Bank, and if a further clarification is sought on this matter, generally from the credit union sector, I think that would be a useful thing. I think the opportunity that he has afforded me in terms of putting this matter on the record of the House and raising it in this public way, and indeed a potential clarification from the Central Bank, is indeed useful.
Thank you, Minister.